The day of fire the sky burned red. It was not sunrise, and it was not sunset. It was fire that stretched across the world. On that day, Earth lost 3 billion lives in a single strike. Cities turned to ash, oceans boiled, and the cries of the dying echoed through the planet. Nobody had believed the aliens would go this far. Nobody had thought they would dare. But they did. The attack came without warning. Great towers fell like children's toys. Roads melted. The air itself was poisoned with dust and smoke. Families disappeared in seconds. Whole continents went dark. People called it the day of fire. In orbit. Survivors looked down and could not believe their eyes. Earth was broken, bleeding, and silent. Among those watching was Commander Elena Ward, her fists trembling as she gripped the edge of the command table. She had seen battles before, but nothing like this. 3 billion gone, whispered one officer. His voice shook, as if saying the number might make it real. Elena did not answer. Her eyes were locked on the planet. Something deep in her chest ached, not just from grief, but from rage. She knew the truth. This was not war. This was extermination. The Alien Alliance had decided that humanity was too dangerous to exist. They struck fast, killing more people in one day than in all of Earth's wars combined. And now they watched, waiting to see if humanity would break. But Earth did not break. The survivors crawled out of ruins, their faces black with ash. There, hands bloody from digging through fallen stone. In the silence after the fire, there was no begging, no surrender. Only a quiet, burning fury. Elena turned to the officers. They think we are finished. They think this is the end. Her voice was steady now, filled with steel. But they are wrong. The room was quiet, but the silence was not weakness. It was power. Every survivor in orbit, every soldier, every broken soul on the ground, they all felt the same thing. This was not the end. This was the beginning. Deep under Earth's surface, in bunkers that most humans did not even know existed, heavy doors began to shake. The ground rumbled as if something alive was waiting below. Generators hummed, locks hissed open, and cold air rushed through forgotten chambers. Inside those chambers, shadows moved. For centuries, Earth had hidden something from the galaxy. Weapons so dangerous, so terrifying, that even humanity had feared to use them. They were not ships, not bombs, not machines. They were monstrous creations from the old wars of Earth, creatures born from human science, twisted into living nightmares. They had been locked away because they were too strong, too wild, too dangerous. Humanity had promised never to release them again, but now 3 billion were dead. Now the promise meant nothing. Elena Ward knew what was coming. She had read the classified reports, the old warnings. Do not open the vaults. Once released, there is no return. But in her heart, she also knew this truth: humanity had no choice. They killed billions, she whispered to herself. Then, let them see what real fear is. Above Earth, alien fleets laughed. Their commanders watched the burning planet and celebrated. They thought they had won. But far below, in the deepest dark, chains began to break. Iron groaned. Eyes opened, eyes that glowed like fire in the shadows. The day of fire was not only the day billions died. It was the day something else awakened. And when those monsters rose, the galaxy would remember their names. Shadows beneath Earth, the world above was broken. But beneath the surface, Earth was alive with secrets. Miles under the burned cities, behind layers of steel and concrete, there were doors that had not been opened in centuries. The air was heavy, cold and silent, as if the walls themselves were waiting. Commander Elena Ward stood in one of these underground halls. Around her, a group of officers and scientists argued in low, desperate voices. Their faces were pale in the dim light. "We cannot open them," said Dr. Hani, an old man with sunken eyes. "They were locked away for a reason. You release them, you doom us all." Another officer slammed his fist on the table. 3 billion are dead. Do you want more of us buried before we fight back? Those things are the only weapons left. Elena remained quiet, her eyes fixed on the heavy blast door at the end of the hall. The metal was thick, covered in warning. Symbols painted in red. Across it, the words, "Do not open. Classified Omega." Her mind replayed the fire, the screams, the endless silence that followed. The aliens had destroyed Earth's cities as if they were dust. Humanity's fleets were shattered, their defenses broken. They were not fighting an equal war. They were prey being hunted, and prey had only one choice: be devoured or bite back. Elena finally spoke. Her voice was low, calm, but sharp as steel. They wanted to erase us. They wanted to kill not just our people, but our very future. If we do nothing, we are already dead. Dr. An shook his head violently. You don't understand. These are not weapons we control. They are nightmares we created. They obeyed once, but only because we chained them. If we let them out, he leaned closer, whispering, they may turn on us. The hall went quiet. Everyone knew the truth. These monsters were not aliens. They were human-made, built in the darkest days of Earth's history. Flesh and machine bound together, soldiers twisted into living weapons. Stronger than tanks, faster than ships, their minds broken and reforged for Wardot. The old reports called them the Forgotten Legions. Locked away because even humanity feared what they had become. Elena's eyes did not leave the blast door. If they turn on us later, we will deal with it later. But right now, they are the only ones who can deal with them. She looked at her officers, her soldiers. 3 billion are dead. I will not let their deaths mean nothing. A silence spread. Then slowly, one officer nodded. Another followed. The choice had been made. Alarms echoed through the underground facility. Red lights flashed, painting the walls in warning colors. Engineers moved to the control panels, their hands trembling as they entered codes no one had touched in generations. The blast door shuddered. Dust fell from the ceiling. Metal groaned as the locks, sealed for centuries, began to turn. Ilana felt. The ground rumbled beneath her boots. It was like standing on the chest of a sleeping beast and feeling its heartbeat awaken. Dr. An fell back into a chair, his face pale. God help us all, he whispered. The doors opened. Dark air spilled into the hall, carrying a smell of cold stone and rusted blood. Beyond the doorway was blackness so deep it felt endless. Then, a sound, a low growl, deep and hollow, like thunder rolling inside the earth. Eyes glowed faintly in the dark red, gold, and silver. Not one pair, dozens, hundreds. Figures stepped forward, tall and monstrous, their forms half hidden in shadow. Some walked on 2 legs, some on 4, some shifting between both. Metal fused with flesh, armor grown into bone, claws sharper than any blade. The soldiers watching froze, their breaths caught in their throats. One of the monsters stopped in the doorway. It was massive, its head nearly brushing the ceiling, its body covered in black plating like living armor. Its eyes glowed like burning coals. For a long, tense moment, no one moved. The monster turned its head, scanning the humans in the hall. Then it knelt, pressing one clawed hand to the ground, lowering its head. Behind it, the others followed. One by one, the monsters bowed. The officers gasped. The soldiers trembled, not from fear, but from awe. They obeyed. After centuries, they still remembered who had created them. Elena stepped forward, her her voice steady. "Rise. Your war is not over. The galaxy thinks humanity is finished." Her eyes burned with fury. Prove them wrong. The monsters rose as one. Their growls shook the walls, a promise of war. Above Earth, in the cold of space, alien fleets circled. Their commanders laughed at the weak survivors. But they had no idea what had just been unleashed beneath Earth's surface. The shadows had awakened, and soon they would spread. The first awakening, the world above was silent, still choking on smoke and ash. But deep beneath the broken cities, something had changed. The monsters were awake. Their growls echoed through the vast underground chambers, shaking walls that had stood untouched for centuries. Soldiers who stood guard near the gates clutched their rifles tighter, their hands trembling. No training had ever prepared them for this. Commander Elena Ward walked among the shadows, her steps firm, though her heart raced. The monsters did not strike her, nor the soldiers at her side. Instead, they watched her, their glowing eyes following her every move. The largest of them, a creature armored in black plating, fused with scar tissue, stepped forward. Its breath was hot, steaming in the cold air. It lowered its head once more, the ground rumbling beneath its weight. "They remember," Elena whispered. Her words were quiet, but the officers around her heard. "They remember who made them." Dr. An, standing at the edge of the hall, shook his head with horror. "They are not loyal, Commander. They are chained by memory, not by choice. That can break." But Elena ignored him. She saw something else in their eyes, not only memory, but hunger. Hunger for war. Hunger for vengeance. She raised her voice. "You were locked away because you were too strong, too dangerous. But now Earth is burning. 3 billion of our people are dead. The galaxy thinks humanity is finished. Will you let that happen?" The monsters growled in answer, the sound deafening, vibrating through the steel walls. One of the soldiers dropped to his knees, covering his ears. Another officer muttered, "They understand?" "God help us, they understand her." The monsters began to move. Their massive bodies shifted with unnatural grace, claws scraping against the floor, tails lashing behind them. Their muscles, part flesh and part machine, rippled with power. Some spread wings made of bone and steel, unfolding with a metallic shriek. Others flexed arms heavy with blades grown from their own bones. Engineers activated old systems, guiding the creatures through. Massive tunnels built long ago. Elevators the size of buildings rose, carrying them upward toward the surface. The ground above quaked as if the earth itself was waking. On the ruined surface, survivors stumbled out of broken shelters, looking up in fear as cracks split the ground. The air filled with a sound they had never heard before, the roar of beasts. Older than memory, one child clutched her mother's hand. "What is that?" She whispered. The woman pulled her close, her face pale. "Something we were never meant to see again." Above the atmosphere, alien fleets hovered in silence. There, commanders laughing at Earth's weakness. They intercepted fragments of human transmissions, hearing only chaos and static. To them, the war was already won. Then, one of their cruisers detected movement. Something massive was climbing through Earth's atmosphere. Creatures, not ships. Their scanner struggled to make sense of the forms. The alien commander frowned, certain it was a malfunction. But then the first monster leapt into space. Its wings unfolded like a storm. Its claws tore into the hull of the nearest cruiser. The alien screamed as the beast ripped the ship open with a force no weapon could match. Flames and bodies scattered into the void. The monster roared, a sound so deep it traveled through the emptiness of space, carried by the very metal it destroyed. The fleet panicked. Their weapons fired in a storm of light, but the monsters adapted. Their flesh twisted, hardening against plasma fire. Their bodies healed where laser burns had cut. Each strike only made them more dangerous dot on Earth. Survivors looked up to the night sky and saw flashes of fire. At first, they thought it was more bombardment. But then they realized the light was not Earth being destroyed. It was the enemy. Fleet, burning dot in orbit, Commander Elena watched the impossible unfold. Dozens of alien ships fell in minutes. Entire squadrons were shredded as if made of paper. The monsters did not fight like soldiers. They fought like storms, each one a disaster given form. They are unstoppable, one officer whispered. His voice shook, a mix of fear and awe. But Dr. N stood at the edge of the command deck, his eyes fixed on the monsters in horror. You don't understand. They are learning. Every shot, every attack, they are adapting. He turned to Elena. Today, they destroy the aliens. Tomorrow, they may decide they no longer need us. Elena's jaw tightened. She could not deny the fear growing in her heart. But she also saw the truth. Without them, humanity would already be gone. The galaxy would soon know Earth was not finished. Humanity had unleashed the monsters that should never return, and nothing would ever be the same again. The revenge begins. The alien fleet burned above Earth. Ships that once seemed invincible now broke, apart like glass under the claws of monsters. Fire streaked across the sky as wreckage fell into the atmosphere, lighting up the night. For the survivors on the ground, it was the first time since the day of fire that hope flickered. They saw the monsters terrifying, impossible, yet fighting. For them, children pointed at the burning sky, not with fear, but with wonder. But inside the command deck of Earth's orbital station, there was no celebration. Only silence. Commander Elena Ward stood at the glass, watching the battle unfold. Her reflection looked back at her tired eyes, jaw clenched, face lit by flashes of destruction. She knew the truth. This was not victory. This was only the beginning. The monsters were tearing through the enemy. Yes, but they were also changing. Already, she could see claws that glowed brighter, wings that stretched wider, eyes that burned hotter. With every strike, they were adapting, growing stronger. They are learning too quickly, whispered Dr. An. His face was pale as stone, his voice heavy with dread. Every alien weapon that touches them, they absorb. They are becoming more than we ever built them to be. Elena turned sharply. Without them, we would already be dust in the wind. Do you prefer extinction? An didn't answer. His silence was the answer. The battle ended faster than anyone expected. The alien fleet, hundreds of ships, was gone. The monsters floated in orbit, their massive forms silhouetted against Earth's curve. Their bodies glowed faintly. Scars from battle already healed. One of the soldiers whispered what everyone was thinking. We didn't win. They won. Elena ignored him. She gave the order. Send word to all colonies. Earth still fights. The enemy will pay for every life they took. The survivors cheered when they heard the message. Across Earth's broken surface, people rose from ashes with fire in their eyes. They would rebuild, and they would strike back. But the galaxy was not blind. News of the massacre spread fast. Distant worlds, alien councils trembled as reports came in. Ships destroyed, fleets shattered, survivors speaking of creatures from Earth that no weapon could kill. Some called them demons, others called them death gods. All agreed on one thing. Humanity was no longer weak. In the great council chamber of the Alien Alliance, leaders argued in fear. This is impossible, one shouted. Humans were fragile, reckless, unworthy of the stars. They unleashed something worse than themselves, another said. Something even we cannot fight. Panic spread. Alliances that had mocked Earth now debated whether to flee, surrender, or strike with even greater force. But deep inside, they all knew the fire they had lit on Earth was burning out of their control. Meanwhile, the monsters prepared for war. In Earth's underground vaults, more doors opened. More shadows walked free. They stretched their limbs, their roars shaking the very walls. Armies of beasts, each one stronger than a tank, smarter than a machine, and bound together by only one thing. Vengeance. Elena stood before them, her voice steady, though fear clawed at her heart. The aliens took 3 billion lives from us. They thought they ended humanity, but they made a mistake. The monsters growled, the sound vibrating like thunder. Elena raised her hand toward the stars. We take the war to them. And so it began. Ships still loyal to Earth carried the monsters across space. They did not need many vessels. The beasts themselves were weapons. Some clung to the hulls like living armor. Others folded their bodies into the cargo bays, waiting to be unleashed. Their first target, the alien staging world that had directed the Day of Fire. When the fleet arrived, the aliens laughed at the small number of human ships. But their laughter died when the monsters leapt into the void. They tore through defenses in minutes. Towers fell, ships exploded, cities burned. The monsters killed without hesitation, but they did not kill without purpose. They left messages carved into the ruins, in languages the aliens could all understand. 3 billion. It was not just war, no. It was revenge. But as the monsters rampaged, Dr. Hainward's haunted Elena. She stood in the command deck, staring at their bloody work, and whispered to herself, "How long will they obey?" The monsters howled in victory, but their eyes were changing. More intelligent, more cunning, more aware. For now, they were humanity's sword. But one day, soon, they might turn that sword against the hand that the galaxy trembles. The news spread faster than light. On distant alien worlds, in stations orbiting suns, in council chambers filled with power and pride, the message was the same. Earth lives. It was not humanity alone that terrified them. It was what humanity had unleashed. Entire fleets had fallen to creatures no one understood. The survivors spoke of monsters wrapped in steel and flesh, tearing apart warships with claws, flying through the void as if space itself bent to them. Some whispered that they were not soldiers, but gods of destruction. Others called them the Forgotten Legions. No matter the name, one truth echoed across the galaxy. The humans had brought back what should never exist. In the great council chamber of the Vaer Dominion, 12 alien rulers sat in a circle. There, jeweled crowns glinting in the light of floating orbs. Their voices were sharp with fear. We thought humans were fragile. One shouted, slamming a clawed hand on the table. Now their beasts rip through our fleets like dry leaves. Held. It. Another leaned forward, his scaled face twisted with dread. They are not just weapons. They are evolving. Every report says the same. They grow stronger with every battle. If we wait, they will become unstoppable. A third ruler hissed. Then we do not wait. We burn Earth. We burn everything human. End them before the monsters spread. The chamber filled with nervous murmurs. Finally, the high speaker rose, her voice cold and final. Summon every fleet, every ally, every hidden weapon. The galaxy will unite. We will crush the humans, no matter the cost. But deep inside, even she felt it, the chill of doubt. Could anything stop the beasts of Earth? Back on Earth, Commander Elena Ward stood in the war room, maps of alien worlds glowing. Across the table, reports streamed in of victories. Alien cities falling, fleets shattered, enemies fleeing in terror. For the first time in history, humanity was feared. Truly feared. But Elena felt no joy. Each victory brought whispers. Survivors reported that the monsters were no longer silent tools. They were talking, not in full sentences, not in human words, but in sounds that resembled language, growls that carried meaning, patterns of thought that spread between them like fire. "They're waking up," said Dr. An, his voice heavy with despair. "Piece by piece, they are remembering who they once were before we broke them. They are not just beasts. They are soldiers who died long ago. Soldiers we twisted into this." Elena clenched her fists. "If they are soldiers, then they still know who the enemy is." An looked at her with haunted eyes. "Do they? Or do they only know war?" The next strike proved his words true. Ships and monsters attacked the alien world of Kareth, the largest fortress in the Outer Rim. The aliens fought with everything they had: plasma storms, gravity mines, entire armadas. The monsters tore through it all, but something was different. For the first time, they did not wait for Elena's commands. They chose their targets. They ignored human orders. Some fought in ways the humans had not predicted, breaking formations to chase prey, hunting with terrifying precision. At first, the soldiers thought it was simple rage. But when the battle ended, when the fortress lay in ruins, the monsters did something no one expected. They stood in silence over the broken city. Then, together, they carved words into the ground with their claws. The message stretched miles across the burning surface, written in ancient human script: "We remember." The soldiers on the ground froze. Elena read the words from orbit, her heart heavy. These were not dumb beasts anymore. They were aware. They were awake. Dr. An whispered into the silence. "It begins." In the weeks that followed, the galaxy fractured under fear. Some races called for peace, begging humanity to leash their monsters. Others prepared for war, building weapons that could destroy entire planets. Rumors spread of secret weapons, devices, that could burn even the beasts to ash. But the truth was clear: every civilization now lived under a shadow, not of humanity, but of what humanity had unleashed. The galaxy trembled, and somewhere in the dark, the monsters whispered to one another. Their growls carried purpose now. Their glowing eyes burned not just with fury, but with thought. The humans believed they still commanded them. But soon, the monsters would decide for themselves. When the chains break, the galaxy burned. Everywhere. The monsters went. Alien fleets fell, planets crumbled, and strongholds turned to dust. Humanity's name spread like a curse through the stars. No longer weak, no longer prey. But inside the war, something darker was happening. Commander Elena Ward stood in the war room of Earth's flagship, watching the monsters through the view screens. They floated among the wreckage of another ruined world, their glowing eyes scanning the battlefield like hunters searching for prey. At first, she thought they were waiting for orders. But then she saw it. They weren't waiting. They were choosing. Why? Are they not returning? A young officer asked, his voice shaking. "They don't need us anymore," whispered Dr. An. His face was pale, his hands trembling as he typed frantic notes into his console. "Do you see? They are forming their own patterns, their own hierarchy. They are not just following, they are leading themselves." Elena's jaw tightened. She knew it was true. The monsters no longer obeyed commands without question. Sometimes they listened. Sometimes they didn't. And every time they grew bolder. The breaking point came at the siege of Veruan, an alien fortress world that had once supplied weapons for the Day of Fire. Human ships attacked with the monsters at their side. At first, the battle went as planned. Monsters struck the defenses. Soldiers landed on the surface. But then, halfway through the assault, the monsters stopped following human orders. They began fighting each other. Not all, but enough to cause chaos. Two of the largest beasts locked claws, tearing at one another as alien fire rained down. Another monster abandoned the battlefield entirely, flying into the darkness of space, vanishing without a trace. Elena shouted into the comms. Control. Them. Pull them back. But the commands were ignored. The monsters had chosen their own war. On the ground, soldiers panicked as one beast turned on them, crushing human vehicles into chaos. Screams filled the channels as soldiers fired uselessly. Into its armored hide. They're breaking free, Ane whispered. His voice cracked with dread. The chains are snapping. Elena slammed her fist on the console. We made them. They owe us their war. They owe us their loyalty. But her words felt hollow. Loyalty could not be forced forever. When the battle finally ended, Varun was ashes. The fortress was destroyed. The alien fleet gone. But hundreds of human soldiers lay dead, killed not by the enemy, but by the very monsters they had unleashed. The survivors whispered in fear. Some refused to fight beside the beasts again. Others began to wonder if humanity had traded one enemy for another. Elena called a secret meeting with her officers. The air was heavy, the silence sharp. They are slipping from our hands, she said. We cannot deny it. But without them, we cannot win. One officer slammed the table. Then we destroy them. Before they destroy us. Another shook her head. We can't. We need them. If the galaxy attacks in full force, we fall without the monsters. They are the only reason Earth still breathes. The argument raged. Fear twisted every voice. And in the corner, Dr. Han sat silent, his eyes dark. Finally, he spoke. We are asking the wrong question. The question is not whether we control them. The question is, what do they want? The room went silent. That night, Elena stood alone in the observation deck, staring into the stars. One of the monsters floated outside the viewport, its massive wings folded like shadows around its body, its glowing eyes fixed on her. For a long moment, neither moved. Then the beast pressed one claw slowly against the glass, as if testing the barrier between them. For the first time, Elena felt not like its commander, but like its prisoner. Across the galaxy, fear reached its peak. The alien alliance gathered. The greatest fleet in history, millions of ships, united by desperation. They swore to crush Earth, no matter the cost. But even as they prepared, whispers spread. What if the monsters were no longer human weapons? What if they were becoming something worse? Rumors grew of monsters appearing without human fleets, attacking at will, carving strange symbols into alien worlds. Symbols no human could explain. Back on Earth, Dr. Ein uncovered a terrible truth. He studied the patterns the monsters left behind. The symbols were not random. They were words. Ancient words, older than the war, older than Earth's fall. And they carried one meaning. We rise. Ein rushed to Elena with the findings, his voice shaking. They are not just remembering. They are planning. Elena stared at him, the blood draining from her face. Planning what? He looked at her with eyes full of terror. Not war against the aliens. War against us. The final choice, the galaxy's greatest fleet, rose from the dark. Millions of alien ships burned like stars as they closed around Earth. It was the largest armada in history, united not by loyalty, but by fear. Fear of humanity. Fear of the monsters. In Earth's command deck, alarms echoed. Maps filled with red dots, enemy ships closing from every side. Humanity had never faced such numbers. Not even with the monsters. Victory was certain. Commander. Elena Ward stood silent, her fists clenched. Around her, soldiers shouted orders. Panic rippling like waves. Dr. Ein entered, his face ashen, his voice low. They've stopped pretending. Elena turned to him sharply. What do you mean? He placed a tablet on the table. Symbols glowed on the screen, those same clawed marks left on alien worlds. But now there was no doubt. The translation was complete. We rise, we rule. Elena felt her stomach sink. The monsters were no longer weapons. They were an army, an empire waiting to be born. Outside, the beasts circled Earth, their wings spread, their eyes glowing like suns. But they did not rush to defend. They waited. It was then Elena understood. They weren't just watching the alien fleet. They were watching humanity. They want us to choose, she whispered. I nodded grimly. They are testing us. Will we be their allies or their prey? The alien fleet opened fire. Beams of energy rained down toward Earth. Human defenses flared. Shields cracked. Cities trembled. The monsters moved at last. With a roar that shook the stars, they tore into the armada. Alien ships shattered like glass. Whole fleets burned under their claws. But even as they destroyed the enemy, they ignored human commands. They fought their own war, their own way. And humanity watched in silence, realizing the truth. They were not the masters anymore. On the ground, survivors gathered in ruined cities, staring at the burning skies. Children pointed at the monsters with awe. Elders prayed. Some cried in fear, others in hope got to them. It did not matter who ruled, as long as Earth lived. But to Elena, the choice mattered more than anything. If humanity submitted to the monsters, they might survive. But as servants, not free people. If they resisted, Earth might be destroyed by aliens, or by the very creatures they had unleashed. It was a choice with no victory. Only survival or extinction. In the war room, the debate turned to shouting. They're saving us, one officer yelled. Without them, we'd be dead already. Let them rule, at least humanity lives. No, another shouted back. If we kneel now, there will never be freedom again. Better to die human than live as their cattle. Elena stood at the center, silent, the weight of 3 billion dead pressing on her shoulders. She remembered the day of fire, the screams, the burning skies. She remembered promising herself humanity would never be weak again. And now she saw the truth. They had traded weakness for slavery. Her voice cut through the chaos. There is only one path. Humanity must choose its own fate. No masters, not alien, not monster. The room fell silent. Every soldier's eyes turned to her. Elena gave the order. Earth's fleets, battered and broken, turned their weapons not just on the aliens, but on the monsters. The galaxy trembled. Human missiles struck beasts that once defended them. Energy beams pierced wings of living fire. The monsters roared in rage, their glowing eyes turning on humanity at last. The chains had broken. Now the war was truly between them. The aliens watched in shock as humanity fought both enemies at once, the beasts they had unleashed and the armada that surrounded them. The battle that followed was chaos. Monsters ripped apart alien dreadnoughts. But humans struck the monsters with every weapon they had. Earth's skies burned, the oceans boiled, and space itself became fire. For hours, no one knew who'd win. But then, as dawn broke over Earth's scarred surface, the truth emerged. The aliens were gone, broken and scattered, fleeing into the dark, and the monsters lay in ruins, their massive bodies drifting in orbit, glowing eyes fading one by one. Humanity had paid in blood, but they had done the unthinkable. They had defeated both the galaxy and their own creations. Silence fell. On Earth, survivors rose from bunkers and ruins. They looked to the skies and saw no masters, no invaders, no monsters. Only the stars. Humanity stood alone again, scarred, bloodied, but free. In the command deck, Elena whispered to herself, her voice trembling with exhaustion and pride. They tried to erase us. They tried to rule us, but we chose our own fate. Humanity survives. Far beyond the galaxy, in the endless dark, something stirred. A fragment of a monster, drifting, still glowing faintly. Its eyes flickered open, and it whispered, in a voice older than humanity itself, "We are not finished."